It's a twist no one saw coming. Gladys Russell, the young woman who has spent most of her life under the watchful eyes of her powerful mother and the judgmental whispers of New York society, is about to form a bond with one of the most mysterious and influential men in the city, the Duke. The news of this alliance feels almost impossible. And yet, it's the very kind of unexpected move that could turn the balance of high society upside down. For Gladys, this is not just a personal connection. It could be the moment that changes her entire future. But with change comes risk, and this partnership might be as dangerous as it is promising. Gladys has always been caught between two worlds: the traditions of old money, represented by her mother Agnes, and the fierce ambition of her father's new money empire. She has long been the jewel her family guards closely, a young woman whose social debut was treated like a military campaign. Every dance, every conversation, every public appearance was carefully planned to ensure she would marry well and strengthen the family status. But in the weeks leading up to episode 8, Gladys' carefully shaped path has started to shift. She's grown bolder, more willing to question the rules, and less interested in letting others choose her fate. The problem? Independence doesn't come easily for a young woman in the Gilded Age, especially when every move is scrutinized by the city's most powerful women. The Duke, meanwhile, is a figure wrapped in whispers, known for his charm, wealth, and connections that stretch across continents. He carries both prestige and a certain level of danger. His reputation is spotless in public, but those who know the undercurrents of society suspect he's a man who plays the long game, aligning himself with the right people at the right time to secure influence. He has rarely taken much interest in the younger generation of debutantes, preferring to mingle with established power players. That's why this sudden connection with Gladys feels so surprising. It's not just that their worlds have collided, it's that they seem to have found a shared purpose, even if no one can quite figure out what it is yet. The leaked details about Episode 8 suggests that Gladys and the Duke's first real meeting is far from accidental. A grand social event, possibly orchestrated by Bertha, brings them into the same room, and from the moment they exchange words, it's clear there's a spark, not necessarily romantic, but charged with possibility. The Duke recognizes something in Gladys that others have overlooked: a quiet intelligence, a readiness to step into her own power. For her part, Gladys sees in the Duke a potential escape from the cage of societal expectations. He offers not only guidance but also the promise of doors opening that even her mother's name cannot unlock, yet the very idea of such an alliance is enough to stir trouble. In the delicate ecosystem of New York high society, every connection is watched and every motive questioned. For Gladys to be seen in the Duke's company will ignite speculation. Is she seeking romance, or is this a calculated move to secure her future? For the Duke, attaching himself to a young woman still under her mother's roof could be seen as bold or reckless. Those who have fought for Gladys' attention before, including young men eager to marry into her family's fortune, may see the Duke as an obstacle, one they will not easily tolerate. This opening chapter of their connection is more than just a meeting. It's the first step in a game of strategy where trust will be tested, reputations will be at stake, and the line between ally and rival will blur. Episode 8 promises to show us not only how Gladys reacts to the Duke's interest, but also how quickly the rest of society begins to turn this surprising friendship into a weapon. And as with all things in the Gilded Age, the most dangerous battles are the ones fought behind closed doors. Gladys. Life leading up to this moment has been a constant tug-of-war between her own desires and the expectations laid upon her. In the first 2 seasons, she was treated like a valuable prize in the Russell family's campaign to solidify their place in New York society. Her debut was grand, her suitors carefully chosen, and her freedom quietly restricted. Even as season 3 began, she was still living under the shadow of her mother Agnes' watchful eye, a woman whose rigid adherence to tradition often left Gladys feeling like she was playing a role rather than living her own life. But episode 8 marks a subtle shift in that dynamic. Gladys is no longer content to be a silent ornament in her family's grand social ambitions. She wants to carve her own path, even if it means forming alliances her mother would never approve of. This is where the Duke enters the picture, and his role cannot be overstated. Unlike the young men paraded before Gladys in previous seasons, the Duke doesn't seem interested in charming her with empty compliments or trying to win her over for the sake of her dowry. His approach is more measured, almost calculating. He asks questions, listens closely, and treats her as if she is capable of understanding the subtleties of the political and economic games that define high society. For Gladys, this is a revelation, to be taken seriously not just as a young woman of marriageable age, but as a person with ideas and potential influence. The leak suggests that this newfound attention comes at a time when Gladys feels increasingly isolated. Bertha is absorbed in her own high-stakes social battles. Agnes is clinging to her old-world values, and her friends are either caught up in their own romances or simply unable to understand the pressures she faces. The Duke offers a kind of companionship that's rare in her world, someone who sees beyond her beauty and family name, and who might help her step into a more powerful role. Whether that help is genuine or part of a larger plan on his part is a question that lingers in every whispered conversation about them. It's worth noting that the Duke himself is a figure whose motivations are rarely transparent. His charm is effortless, but it's also a tool. He moves through social circles with ease, aligning himself with the people who can help him achieve his aims, whatever they may be. This makes his sudden interest in Gladys all the more intriguing and potentially dangerous. If he's looking to strengthen his influence, attaching himself to the Russell family through Gladys could be a strategic masterstroke. If he's acting out of genuine admiration for her wit and spirit, then it's a rare glimpse of vulnerability. In a man known for keeping his true feelings hidden, Gladys, however, isn't entirely naive. She has grown since her debut, and the challenges she's faced have given her a quiet resilience. The leak hints at moments in episode 8 where she subtly tests the Duke, probing to see how much he truly respects her independence and how far he's willing to go in supporting her. These moments may seem small, a conversation at the edge of a ballroom, a private walk in the garden, but in the coded language of Gilded Age society, they carry enormous weight. Each word, each glance is part of a negotiation between two people who are both aware of the stakes. The social consequences of this alliance begin to surface quickly. Gossip moves faster than truth in New York's elite circles, and before long, whispers about Gladys and the Duke's connection begin to ripple through the city. Some see it as a bold move that could finally secure Gladys a place of her own in the social hierarchy. Others view it as reckless, a dangerous flirtation that could damage her reputation. And behind every closed door there are those, from Oscar Van Ryn to Larry Russell, who are already calculating how this new relationship could affect their own plans. This section of the story isn't just about a young woman meeting a powerful man, it's about the shift in Gladys' mindset. She's beginning to realize that power in her world doesn't always come from defying the rules outright. Sometimes it comes from learning to use those rules to her advantage, finding the right ally at the right moment, and making moves that seem small but carry lasting consequences. Episode 8 positions her not as a passive figure in the grand game of society, but as an emerging player, one who may be willing to take risks no one expects. The leaked details for Episode 8 paint a vivid and almost cinematic picture of Gladys and the Duke's first significant interaction, a moment that feels like the spark of something much larger than anyone, perhaps even they themselves, can fully grasp. The encounter reportedly takes place during one of the most opulent events of the season, a gathering where every detail is meant to impress. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over a sea of silk gowns and tailored tuxedos, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the faint hum of whispered conversations. This is the kind of environment where alliances are born, reputations are made, and the wrong step can haunt a person for years. The leak suggests that their introduction is anything but random. While it may appear to the guests that they simply cross paths, those in the know suspect it was carefully orchestrated, and the hand behind it might very well be Bertha Russell herself. Bertha, always thinking several moves ahead, may have recognized the potential value in having the Duke take an interest in her daughter. Whether she sees it as a way to secure Gladys' future or as a strategic connection for her own ambitions is unclear, but either way, the stage is set for a meeting that could shift the course of the season when Gladys and the Duke finally speak. The exchange is far from the usual pleasantries expected at such gatherings. Instead of complimenting her gown or remarking on the music, the Duke reportedly engages her in a conversation about art, politics, and the shifting landscape of New York society. This alone is enough to set him apart from the typical suitors who have approached her in the past. Gladys, who has often felt underestimated, finds herself both surprised and intrigued by his willingness to speak to her as an equal. The leaked script notes hint at an underlying current of tension in their conversation, a subtle game of testing boundaries. The Duke makes remarks that could be read as simple observations but seem to carry deeper meaning, as if he is gauging how far Gladys is willing to step outside the strict lines drawn by her family and society. Gladys, in turn, pushes back in small but significant ways, revealing flashes of wit and independence that catch the Duke's attention. It's a verbal dance, one that leaves them both more curious about the other by the end of the night. This moment doesn't go unnoticed. Across the room, figures like Oscar Van Ryn and Mrs. Winterton watch closely, their expressions betraying a mix of curiosity and concern. For some, the idea of Gladys aligning herself with the Duke is thrilling, a potential shake-up in the rigid social order. For others, it's a threat, especially if it means the Duke's influence could rival their own. In a world where every interaction can be leveraged, the sight of Gladys and the Duke deep in conversation is like a signal flare to the rest of the room. The leak also hints at a quieter, more intimate exchange later in the evening, away from the watchful eyes of the crowd. Perhaps they step onto a balcony or retreat to a corner of the garden, where the noise of the party fades into the background. Here, the Duke speaks more directly, hinting at opportunities and doors that could open for Gladys if she chooses to align herself with him. He doesn't spell out his intentions, and that's part of the intrigue. Is this the beginning of a mentorship, a friendship, or something more strategic? Gladys listens carefully, weighing his words, knowing full well that an alliance with a man like him comes with both power and danger. What makes this scene so captivating is the balance of uncertainty. Both characters are aware that they are being observed and judged, yet both are willing to let the conversation unfold without rushing to define it. This restraint adds to the tension, leaving the audience and the gossiping guests to wonder what the true nature of their connection will be. By the time they part ways that night, there is no grand declaration, no dramatic gesture. Instead, there's something far more powerful, the promise of future meetings, of a slow and deliberate partnership that could reshape the social map of New York. In the context of the season, this moment is more than just a subplot. It's a pivotal turning point for Gladys, marking the first time she takes an active step into the high-stakes game of influence that her family has been playing for years. And for the Duke, it's the beginning of a relationship that could serve his interests in ways not yet revealed. The beauty of the leak is that it gives us just enough to imagine the possibilities without showing us the full picture. And in the Gilded Age, those possibilities are often more dangerous than they appear, asterisk if the leak about Gladys and the Duke's alliance is true. The ripple effect across New York high society in Episode 8 could be nothing short of explosive. The Gilded Age is a world where perception is as valuable as gold, and in some cases even more dangerous. A single conversation, a shared dance, or a knowing glance can set the city's rumor mill ablaze. And this particular connection has all the makings of a social earthquake. What makes it so volatile is not just who the Duke is, but who Gladys is becoming. She's no longer the quiet, compliant debutante she was in earlier seasons. She's stepping into a version of herself that is both more confident and more unpredictable. This makes her a potential wild card in a society that thrives on control. The most immediate reaction will likely come from her own family. Agnes Van Ryn has always been the guardian of propriety and tradition, and the idea of her niece forming an alliance, strategic or otherwise, with a man like the Duke could strike her as reckless. Agnes operates under the belief that the rules of society are fixed, and that any deviation comes with a price. If she sees the Duke as a man of questionable motives, she will almost certainly try to put an end to the relationship before it gains momentum. But in doing so, she may unintentionally push Gladys closer to him, especially if Gladys views her aunt's interference as yet another attempt to control her life. Bertha Russell, on the other hand, could see things differently. Ever the strategist, Bertha might welcome the Duke's interest in her daughter, not for sentimental reasons, but for the power it could bring. If Bertha believes the Duke can help her expand her influence beyond the New York elite and into European circles, she may actively encourage the connection, even if it comes with risks. This could lead to a quiet but pointed clash between Bertha and Agnes as each woman tries to pull Gladys in a different direction. The tension between old money's rigid rules and new money's bold ambition would be on full display, with Gladys caught in the middle, beyond the family, the wider social circle will have its own reactions. Oscar Van Ryn, who has long seen marriage as a means to secure his own future, could view the Duke as a dangerous rival. If Oscar's plans for social advancement are threatened by Gladys' newfound alliance, he may resort to subtle sabotage, perhaps by spreading rumors designed to cast doubt on the Duke's intentions. Meanwhile, figures like Mrs. Winterton could use the situation to stir drama, whispering in the right ears to ensure that the gossip reaches the most influential salons and parlors. The Duke himself will also have to navigate the fallout. Aligning with Gladys could strengthen his position, but it could also make him a target. In a world where power is maintained through carefully curated relationships, even the appearance of scandal can be enough to weaken one's standing. If other influential families believe he's using Gladys for personal gain, they may work to isolate him. Conversely, if they see the alliance as genuine, it could open doors to opportunities neither he nor Gladys could have reached alone. The real question is whether this alliance is built on mutual trust or mutual convenience. If Gladys believes the Duke truly respects her and her ambitions, she may invest herself in the relationship more deeply than she should, but if the Duke is simply playing a long game, using her as a pawn in a larger strategy, then the consequences could be devastating. The Gilded Age has always thrived on these layers of ambiguity, where motives are hidden beneath charm and alliances can turn into rivalries overnight. As episode 8 edges toward the season finale, the Gladys-Duke connection could serve as a catalyst for multiple storylines. Their partnership might influence Bertha's latest social battle, disrupt Oscar's carefully laid plans, and even shift the power dynamic between old and new money families. Most intriguingly, it could position Gladys as a player in her own right, someone willing to take calculated risks in order to step out from the shadow of her family's ambitions. The final episodes of the season may well hinge on whether this alliance survives the scrutiny and scheming of New York's elite. If Gladys and the Duke can navigate the treacherous waters of gossip, rivalry, and manipulation, they could emerge as a formidable force in society. But if either one miscalculates, the fallout could be swift and unforgiving, leaving both their reputations in ruins. The leak doesn't tell us how it ends, but it gives us enough to know that whatever happens next will not be easily forgotten, and that the alliance forged in Episode 8 could be either the making or the undoing of Gladys Russell.